Greetings to the viewers at home. My name is Celani Litlalo, and I'm the host of the newly established Entangled podcast. And today we'll be discussing a novel titled Maru. And this is, of course, a novel that is written by Bessie Head, and it was published in 1972. And for this one, I'm not alone. Alongside me is my co host. Her name is Busisa Mahlango, and I'll just briefly allow her to introduce herself.
Good day, good evening, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Busisa Celani, as Celani has stated. And in today's podcast, we'll basically be dissecting the novel Maru by Bessie Head, published, like Celani said, in 1972. What will we be doing today, Celani? What are we going to be focusing on?
So today we'll be focusing on the love triangle in the book Maru, and we'll also be discussing the novel in the context of it being a form of post-colonial betrayal. So, but primarily we're going to focus on the love triangle that takes place in the book, and we shall be doing this by looking into themes such as power, identity, and control. What do you know or understand about the book Maru?
According to my analysis, the book Maru basically highlights on racial or ethnic prejudices.
Because earlier we mentioned that the book was published in 1972, you may remember that Botswana actually gained independence in 1966. So that is a very important part in as far as understanding the book, because also Bessie Head is of course a South African lady. She was a South African woman who was sent to exile in Botswana, and that explains the book setting or taking place in Botswana.
Dilepe as a setting, we look at Umaru and Muleka
Yes.
as African elites
Yes.
that also can be seen as post-colonial betrayal.
Yes.
They are direct representation of that. They inherit post-colonial colonial rule. They inherit the land. They inherit the system as well, which we could call indigenous system of oppression. They oppress. They oppress the Masara underclass, and they also have slaves who are the Masara underclass, just like colonizers.
I think the post-colonial betrayal can also be looked at from the lens of there being an allegory, right? From an allegorical lens, because if you think about it, an allegory actually refers to a kind of a novel that has a hidden meaning. It has a hidden meaning, and that's what we actually are trying to unpack in the book in itself, Maru. You did mention characters like Maru and Margaret, as well as Moleka, that are part of this specific triangle. Would it be safe for us to even argue that there's also another love triangle that consists of the Geledi, Moleka, as well as Margaret?
Oh yes, definitely. Because at some point you can see the Maru and Muleka
Yes.
fighting about Geledi being a concubine.
Yes.
So yes, there is that dynamic of love triangle. A brother and a sister,
Yes.
and a lover. Which is very questionable. Then we have the other love triangle between Margaret, Maru, and Muleka, who are fighting against a Masara teacher.
I think for me, in order for us to actually delve or go deeper into this conversation, we really need to talk briefly about Margaret Cardmore Sr., who possesses the qualities of a colonizer. White people are not from Africa, and they are colonizers in a sense, because they came here with a mission. Because towards the book, she left Margaret Cardmore because she had to go back to England. And like I had said earlier, the historical context was very important for us, because in 1966, they all left, and Margaret Cardmore, unfortunately, Jr.,
And that's where we see the theme of identity,
Yes.
Kalani. That's where we see the theme of identity in Margaret Cadmore as a missionary, as a white woman. She represents the colonizer.
Yes.
She really does.
because also when you think about it, it's quite interesting, because when you consider the kind of upbringing that Margaret Cadmore actually had, like it was kind of okay, because she grew up with a mom and a dad, even though they were not really her biological parents, but she grew up in a family that was good enough, despite maybe the relationship not being a relationship that is like a mom and a daughter, but the relationship that, or her upbringing was, we can argue that it was fairly good. And it was quite also interesting to actually hear the fact that in spite of all the things that were happening in her life, she still maintained her identity, And throughout the book, consistently, she keeps on saying that I am Masawa, which was actually quite interesting for me. And also, that then becomes a problem when she goes into the village of Dilepe, where she is now set to work or apply her trades as a teacher. And she is now a teacher, and the people of Dilepe also have their own complexities. And the complexities can be explained in the context of characters like Maru as well as Muleka, who are unfortunately or interestingly a part of this love triangle that we are discussing. So Maru and Muleka are Basawa, they are men, they are male figures, and also, like I had said earlier, Margaret Cardmore is a Masawa woman. And throughout the book or throughout the novel, we actually understand that there is a kind of a power dynamic at play where the Basawa are superior and the Masawa are inferior, or seen as less than and incapable and so forth.
Because of their identities.
And that kind of like heightens the thing that we actually alluded to earlier, which was the post-colonial betrayal, because anything that is post-colonial or anything that is post is after, it's after, basically. That's what the word actually means. And when we understand post-colonial, these are times after colonialism actually took place, where Botswana gained independence and so forth and so forth. And even after the independence had been gained by the people of Botswana, the Basawa actually was still, in a sense, colonizing the Masawa people, and there is not much of a difference in that case or in that.
When I think about identity,
Yeah.
I think about Margaret.
Yes.
She is from a mother that gave birth to her in the streets.
Yes.
It's said that she smelled like urine and fire, and how she was treated in the mortuary. She was lying on the ground. The nurses did not want to clean her up, and that's where we see that Margaret's mother represents the voicelessness of the Masara people. Her identity is so significant in the book that as soon as Margaret Cadmore, like you said, she also plays a significant role. As soon as she gets to the mortuary, she's like, why is she lying on the floor? She shouts at the nurses. And then she draws her picture, she sketches her, and she says she looks like a goddess.
Yeah.
And this contrasts the identity of a Masara person, the underclass.
And I actually want us to delve deep into the theme of control, that you can actually take me through that.
Well, theme of control is Dilepe. Dilepe is a control, it's a village of control.
Yeah.
There's control in identity, there is Muleka losing his control, there is manipulation and control, there's just a lot of control to Margaret.
Like the likes of Ranko, for example.
Exactly.
yeah,
He
yeah.
uses Ranku to
Spy.
spy. He uses Ranku to spy. He also uses his sister to also spy. He uses Ranku to spy on Muleka,
Muleka, and
and
uses-
Dikeledi to, and that's very calculated.
Yeah.
It's very calculative and it's very strategic. It shows how intelligent Maru is and intentional he is. He's such an intelligent man and intentional.
Muleka actually loves Margaret, and the lady also happens to love Muleka, and it's really, really quite complex. And upon realizing that Muleka and the lady are about to get married, that kind of rocks Margaret's world.
Maru orchestrated everything. He used gender. He
Yes.
looked at gender. He looked at Ranku. He's a man who's gonna spy on how easy it is to spy on Muleka. A man, another man, instead of using another gender. I mean, and considering the gender dynamics that are taking place in the village of Dilepe, I mean, it would make sense to use the same gender to spy on the other gender. The use of Dikeledi in terms of, gender dynamics to kind of spy on
see where you're going
Margaret.
with
You
this.
get
I
it,
see
you
where
get it. So yeah, and there's
So relatability was important for Maru.
relatability. He's very, like I said, he's very calculative, and the control of identity, Celani, is very, very significant. I mean, the Masara people are the underclass, so it gives Maru and Muleka, or the people of the Basara people, to control the people. I mean, there's a point where Maru says to Muleka, I have slaves that are Masaras.
Yes.
They sleep on the floor. They do not have beds.
Yes.
Right? They use the fire as the blanket. And this is very significant because now we see that they even control their entire being.
Yes.
To them, they are nothing. To them, they are just things. They call them kafirs. It's equivalent to a nigger and a kafir. So I think the theme of control is very significant because that's where the love triangle is also significant.
I think another interesting part or aspect of control is where we see Maru and Moleka kind of having a back and forth over the bed. Where
Yes.
where
Yes.
where Maru actually instructs Moleka to take back the bed because like you had said earlier, I have slaves and my Masawan people are sleeping on the floor. They use the fire for warmth. Who is she to then have a bed? Does that mean that I need to give everyone else a bed? So that this is a patriarchal society. Dilepe is of course a patriarchal society where men also, like you had alluded earlier, that they have paternalistic behaviors where the men make decisions on behalf of women without even consulting the women, tying into the idea of paternalism that actually exists. But who do you think has the most power in the book?
The person that has the most power, Grani, is Maru.
Yeah.
He uses his power in so many ways. He uses his power. At some point, Muleka, at the end, he laughs.
Yeah.
Reading, is it a letter, right? Where he reads that letter and he's like, he even goes to Tikele and he's like, did you know that Maru was planning to marry Margaret? You know, that sense of power, he uses his power very, very well. He even uses power in traditional sense where he goes to Tladi. So power is very, it's a very good theme in the book. In the context of power, everything favors Maru because Maru is the colonizer. He represents the colonizer.
That's what I actually wanted you to say because
He mimics the colonizer. He mimics the colonizer. Everything he does, the control, the things he says in the beginning before he meets Margaret, before he falls in love with Margaret, it's evident of how he mimics the colonizer, the thoughts, the behavior, the way he carries himself is as a colonizer.
when the book actually wraps up, it's kind of like contradictory in a sense because of the kind of subversion that actually exists amongst both Maru and Moleka. Because when you think about it, Maru subverts the existing power structures because there was also a part where he was asked to actually take the chieftaincy thing. And he said, no, I'm still ill, was making excuses. And at the back of his head, he actually had an idea of what he was already going to do. And obviously, he was aware of the fact that he wanted to marry Margaret and he wanted to tipple and then do one better than Moleka because they've always been competitive.
That exactly at the end where he's able to liberate is exactly mimicking the colonizer. When colonizers what? In the beginning you spoke about how the British gave to Botswana the independence. Is Maru not doing the same thing, liberating as such as the colonizer?
I don't think so. I actually feel like Maru was dearly and deeply in love with Margaret because when you also think about it, there was no existing resistance. There was no resistance from the powers that be. And what I mean by the powers that be in this case, I'm referring to basically the Masawan people. There was no clear form of resistance that existed in the book where people are striking, people are doing this. It's like it was a norm for them to
Be experiencing.
yes, like it was a norm for them to be less than the Basawa people created and they were free.
Well, Celani, I guess we have literally covered everything that we had wanted to discuss. We've covered how Maru is Maru a liberator or he's paternalistic. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Well, this is all we have for today. We hope to see you next time, same place. Bye.